like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking. Nation that you call yours, people can do what has been done to our children in West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because we will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory in which we believe in freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic right for us, and that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking. Nation that you call yours, people can do what has been done to our children in West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because you will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory in which we believe in freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic right for us, and that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking. Nation that you call yours, people can do what has been done to our children in West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because you will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory in which we believe in freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic right for us, and that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking.
Good evening, and this is Comrade Fulton Daniel. I will be speaking live here from the great state of Texas, and there's so many things that I am going to be talking about, and I really appreciate you for watching. If you are here in the great state of Texas, it's 2:13 or 2:13 p.m. this afternoon in the great state of Texas here in the United States. And first of all, I want to appreciate, I was invited by a pastor, which he already posted the images. I really appreciate him for inviting me. It was a wonderful blessing to share with him, with the pastor. So I really appreciate you. It was a very important, and there was a great service. It's a wonderful and amazing pastor. Thank you so much for leading the people to the God world. It is very essential, so I must acknowledge, and I want to thank Pastor for inviting me, and I was highly honored. But and I appreciate, look forward, if there is opportunity, I will also be able to attend, including my family. Thank you, I really appreciate it. So this is the most brutal message that I am going to be speaking. Some of the things that I'm going to be showing, it will be very brutal. But however, it is an opportunity to bring this attention to the world community to see the dark side of the world in which we call our world in which we live in. It is quite amazing how you see human beings and you realize that it is the people whom you love. But unfortunately, when you see the dark side of it, it can be very troublesome. And this is the troublesome message that I am going to be releasing. Thank you for watching. Some of the image may not be maybe highly offensive, but however, it is imperative that I bring these images so that we can understand, maybe, hopefully, we can be able to fix the problems. It's not going to be easily fixed, but if we start talking about it, it will be imperative that we can look for a solution. And this is Comrade Fontaine Daniel. I will be speaking live here from the great state of Texas, here in the United States. There are key things that I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to talk about the damaging video coming from Morocco. You know, this video coming from Morocco is very damaging. And when I saw these images, tears runs on my eyes, and I feel the pain. Not only it did happen on this current century, but it happened in Africa. And the worst still, Africa doing it onto Africa. Because if it would have happened in Europe, then we will also call the Europeans against Africa. But it is our own people against our own people within Africa continent, within Africa country. When I Africa country, I don't want to call African country, people just, the word doesn't sound right. Yes, an African country within an African continent, brutal against its own fellow brothers. Just the fact that they have the dagger color. I hope I'm making my statement right and understandable. But anyway, stay tuned and don't go away. And then another thing that I'm going to bring in is a high-profile La Republique prisoner arrived in court in Champagne. What an interesting. Anyway, don't go away. And I'm going to talk about the Kigali getaway. The Kigali getaway. The Kigali getaway. Some may call the Commonwealth of Nations meeting in Kigali. Does the office actually exist? And what is the function and duty of the Commonwealth of Nations? Do they actually represent the people? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe just wear their suit and present it as I am having mine here in the social media to present my suit. I guess that's what they went to Kigali to present it. Do they actually solve problems? Maybe, maybe not. Tune in, stay tuned, and make sure you share this. And also make sure you follow. Make sure you share. Copy and paste, email, and invite your friends to subscribe. This is Comrade Fontaine Daniel speaking here from the great state of Texas for What Making News. I know Pastor was speaking about fake news. So I guess this might not be a fake news because I was in church. Pastor told that there's a lot of fake news. So, but it was a contrast. A contrast differences between a fake news and what the Bible advocates. And so, but I just hear it because it was very interesting philosophical presentation. by the pastor. But however, this is not fake news. This is a reality. Stay tuned, don't go away.
Nation that you call yours, people can do what has been done to our children in West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because you will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory in which we believe in freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic right for us. And that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like the state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking.
Although the title showed the brutal assault on Morocco, but that is not what I am speaking. But I'm going to come back into that brutal assault on Morocco. But this is interesting things. You know, I know I have been speaking about Southern Cameroon. For those who are joining me live for the first time, I always try to make captions so people understand what I am speaking about. Southern Cameroon, for many of you who all know, Southern Cameroon was the former colonial territory of Great Britain. And they initially supposed to gain their independence per United Nations Resolution 1514 XV. But unfortunately, that independence was deprived by the Great Britain colonial administrator, Sir Andrew Cohen. He deliberately refused to honor and respect the United Nations Order Resolution 1514 XV, which should have given the independent state of Southern Cameroon. Imagine Southern Cameroon is more than 13 countries in Europe that are fully independent, but Southern Cameroon population is more than theirs, but yet they are independent in Europe, whereas in Southern Cameroon they are not. 8 million in population that are undergoing excruciating pain, suffering. Southern Cameroon is an Anglo-Saxon way of life where they believe in accountability, they believe in a social justice, they believe in the rule of law, they believe in all these fundamental value of human dignity. But yet, on the other hand, you have a French colony that they believe in a brutal system. And so you will see that most of the high profile of La Republique, that the one that I'm currently showing, is an armed robbery that has robbed the state government of Cameroon and is placed in prison because of billions of money he's extorted, distorted, stolen. And he was invited in court, and he comes in the front of a judge with a champagne in his glass. Imagine if you were sitting at that table as a judge, what will be your reaction? And yet he's going to go free, coming to meet a judge with a glass of champagne in his hand. That is the most outrageous. Imagine coming, if he was an Anglophone or Southern Cameroon citizen, he would have been tortured to death. But yet, as a Francophone, he had the liberty to walk into the front of a judge and having his glass of wine. What a diabolical, disgusting, in a country where you call Cameroon. But of course, and that is why the people of Southern Cameroon cannot live in this habit. Citizens of Southern Cameroon are languishing in jail in La Republique du Cameroun, because they are fighting for the very corruption system that the very citizens of La Republic is carried out like these particular individuals, and yet they become the culprit of suffering, mass execution, and those including the journalists that try to publish report about these corrupt practices by La Republique du Cameroun, and yet they can have their freedom. They are in chain. The Southern Cameroon citizens are more likely in chain in the brutal regime of La Republique du Cameroun. But anyway, stay tuned and don't go away. This is Fonton Daniel making sense.
Nation that you call yours, people can do what has been done to our children in West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because you will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory in which...
Now, let's look at, well, in Africa, we have the Luanda. You all may not have known about Luanda. Luanda, about 10, 20 years ago, was a war-torn area where thousands of people were being slaughtered like animals. You remember, maybe you've forgotten, maybe you were still young, or maybe you are not aware, maybe you focus on your own country, but now this is Luanda. But when the slaughtering of the Luandan people, I'm sure by then it was President of the United States, let me see, if I'm not mistakenly, this slaughtering, I don't know, I'm sure it was Bill Clinton, the President of the United States, at the time when this slaughtering were going on. It was called the genocide of Luanda. I'm sure you've heard about the Hutus and the Tutsi. One person changed that culture of dynamic, and the particular country of culprit was France. France is the culprit and the masterminded behind atrocity going on in Africa. And we, the Southern Cameroon, is not exception. It is exactly the same, and the culprit is France. I think before I dive into the Commonwealth getaway, first thing Africa needs to liberate itself. And the first thing is currency liberalization. Currency liberalization. Africa do not need France to be responsible for the currency circulation in Africa, in any place in Africa. France do not. Africa need to grow, mature, and make critical infrastructural decisions that matters to Africa as a whole. France traveled to Africa free without a visa, and yet Africa cannot travel to France free because of these corrupted malpractices that been imposed upon the colonial era. We should have bypassed those colonial era and began to think functions for the good interest of Africa, so that France should visit Southern Africa as a friend, as a neighbor, as whatever, but no longer to dictate on what has to be done. I am admired the South African who demonstrate in front of the French embassy. I admire his courage. I think Africa needs to start that and ameliorate those policies towards France in particular. Why should Africa, with the highest mineral in the world, and yet become the hungry storm crossing the river just to head to Europe for a better life, whereas they have every material available all resources, whatever you can name, gold, bauxite, mineral, whatever you can name. If the Queen of England is riding on gold and there is no gold in England, then where does the gold come from? It comes from Africa, and yet Africans are suffering. You remember a few times ago I spoke about British Prime Minister, the current ones that you see in Kigali. He said when asylum are granted for Africans in UK, they will be immediately transported to Kigali. That was the former war-torn country that had become a getaway because someone stood up and said no to genocide. I will reform my country and make it a getaway destination. And that is what the Rwandan president did and changed that culture to what it is today. How many of these African dictatorships are thinking about this positive outcome to make? Why should Africa will have to have their currency printed by a French central bank when it has no authority in Africa? It is this colonial belief, especially the French system, that Africa must get rid of it completely and wipe out. Change begins from now. It doesn't begin elsewhere. Now let's look at the Commonwealth of Nations. The Commonwealth of Nations was created that those who utilize the Anglo-Saxon way of life should be able. And that's what brought us to this current discussion. When you look under the Kigali, the Rwandan president is the Prime Minister of La Republique du Cameroun. I call the Prime Minister of La Republique du Cameroun because he is just a stewardship. He's not a Prime Minister that one will appreciate. It's just a stewardship. He has no voice, he has no power, he's simply a steward that just hangs somewhere for demonstration purpose. He's not a Prime Minister. When we talk about Prime Minister, we talk about someone that can carry reform, someone that can sign decree, someone that has moral authority. Let's talk about Prime Minister and head of government. In UK, they may not look structurally the same. The Queen is aside. The Prime Minister runs UK government. The Prime Minister of UK government reports back to the Queen, whereas in Southern Cameroon structure, he's just a figurehead, just stood somewhere because he happens to be what they so-called Anglophone. Southern Cameroon, for many of you who are watching this broadcast, was supposed to be an independent nation that should have got their independence per United Nations Resolution 1514 XV. It says those territories that were under the Allied members be given their rightful independence. Southern Cameroon should have got its independence, and yet they didn't. The Commonwealth of Nations, to which the people of Southern Cameroon has embedded into, and at least 30,000 people of Southern Cameroon have been gruesomely murdered by this brutal regime of Pobia. This document, just underneath Boris Johnson and Rwandan president, is the vote that was carried out by the United Nations here in the United States, here in New York, 1961, in which they fully recognized the statehood of Southern Cameroon, and that the state of Southern Cameroon should come together with the neighboring country, La Republique du Cameroun, under a full entity, two nations of the same status coming together for the common good of joint collaboration. And yet, instead, I could imagine the world calling Southern Cameroon the province of a foreign nation, La Republique du Cameroun, to become a. It watching this, and if much, let me reiterate, some people, including some of the journalists, they say the separatists. I wish people could understand the word separatist. Separatist is not unanimously the same and applied to Southern Cameroon. If Western Province, for those who are familiar with, Western Province choose to leave La Republic, that is a secession because they are seceding from La Republic. If Central Province, Littoral, Grand Nord choose to leave La Republic, that is what is called a secession. They are seceding from La Republic because in the United Nations, when France presented La Republic at the United Nations headquarters, those territories were part of La Republic. Southern Cameroon was never, and so therefore the people of Southern Cameroon cannot be classified as secession because they are not seceding from nobody. I hope that makes sense. Let's bring it to the United States. United States is made up of 51 states. So if one state chooses to leave United States, that is secession because they are seceding from the Union of the United States. But in Southern Cameroon, for example, it has a status. That status is ingrained by the United Nations. United Nations Resolution 1514 XV, which is same applicable to La Republique du Cameroun, applicable to the independence of Nigeria, applicable to several African countries. We wish their sovereignty were recognized. And Southern Cameroon should also be applicable as well. This ongoing war in Southern Cameroon territory, where citizens are being slaughtered, at least 80 citizens of Southern Cameroon are languishing in Nigeria because we choose wrong, dwell on wrong, accept the wrong, and become a principle of easy acceptable. Why should they be sovereign of the people of Southern Cameroon when we have the world leader? Is it just to put on the suit and just walk around and have some individuals called security just protect them so that they can appreciate themselves? And the fundamental question in which they intended to resolve and they have not resolved any. Now stay tuned. This is Comrade Funto here in the great state of Texas, here in the United States.
Believe freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic right for us. And that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking.
هذاك الجندرم البارح والبوليس كيتقاسوا ما لازمش
انا سمعت جدارمي ولا مع المعسكر قال لك علامات وجوج
لا كاين خازني وجدارمي وبوليس
لا بوليسي لا
ياك بوليسي ما كاينش
بوليسي ما كاينش
انتوما مع
لا بوليس حنا
It is quite amazing why the war in Southern Cameroon continues to persist. It's persisting because La Republique Defense Minister Jean-Betty Assomo is the beneficiary. That is his mansion he is building from the money he utilized from the Southern Cameroon War of Independence, the Ambazonia War of Independence. He goes to the Republic Treasury, he collected money and he used it to build his mansion. That is La Republic Defense Minister. I am going to come back to this discussion, and stay tuned, don't go away.
Nation that you call yours, people can do what has been done to our children in West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because you will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory in which we believe in freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic right for us. And that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are telling us, like a state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a few cubes of sugar into a basin of water. Who is the sugar and who is the water? I'm asking.
It is quite disturbing. You know, for many of the images that I am going to bring, it's very disturbing, and I apologize to bring it. But however, if it's not shown, people will not understand why, you know. Africa, one will expect to be freely moved within African continent, as it doesn't matter wherever he goes. He should have some dignity and respect. Yet, there are different categories of Africa. You have the pure black like me, you may have my color here. Then you have those of the Africans that are white. When I talk about Africans that are white, I'm talking about like in North Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, some area in, you have Egypt. Egypt, there are very few cases of black in Egypt. So you have Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, and Algeria, all those places. One should have the liberty to move within those areas and free, and should be respected, and show sense of love, irrespective of whatever it is, so long as it's within the continent. We, Africa, are the most wicked soul, because when I see the images coming from Morocco, it is very painful. It's very painful to watch, seeing that Moroccan government, especially the police force, and it is quite disturbing to watch those images coming from Morocco. First of all, when I saw the images, I take a deep breath and I watch. I said, but where is this images coming from? And the fact is that it's coming from Morocco. It's not just anywhere, but in a country in Africa. I mean, when we talk about sanctions, those are the criteria that those countries must pay a price for Africa. It doesn't matter what color you have. Africa should be a color blind. So everyone must have the liberty to walk, travel within African continent as a whole, irrespective of whatever it is, so long as you were born and bred. But if I initially thought these images was coming from somewhere in Europe, but unfortunately, this image is coming from our own African country. That is a bizarre. And the most brutal of it is the police force in Morocco. That's the rubbish I have ever seen or broadcast within. Some of the images are very offensive, but I have no choice. I will bring it down. And I apologize for all those who will be watching. It is disturbing. How can a Moroccan country treating fellow Africans as animals? If they feel that because they are white, then they need to ship themselves out of African continent. There is no first class, second class, third class, so long as Africa is concerned. But that images coming from Morocco is the most rubbish that has ever carried out by the Moroccan government. All the head of the police department must be in jail. All the head, through the directorate to the administration to the local officials, must be put in jail and their images be published. That is the most disturbing image coming from Morocco. Now let's watch. Stay tuned.
Nation that you call yours, people can do what has been done to our children in West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because you will never take it out of our mouths again, because that is a territory.
This is in Morocco. This is in Morocco. This is the brutal form of Morocco. Treating Africa like They are all armed. They are simply an immigrant. They are not armed. They have no weapon. They are simply an immigrant, simply transversing from Morocco. They have not committed any harm, no atrocity, deliberately. And at least 13 of them were brutally murdered on the spot. Now, let's watch the next video.
In which we believe in freedom. To go out on the street and demonstrate is a basic right for us. And that is why we are saying that there are two Cameroons that came together. If you are...
This is the most outrageous. This is the most outrageous I have ever witnessed within the current century. That Moroccan treating fellow human beings as animals. This is, I think, there should be one condemnation, and that Moroccan government must pay a price. They must pay a price, and they must prevent a consequence. The African on the fellow African as in particular. Now let's stay tuned. Let's watch the video as I proceed.
Like the state minister stood here last year and told us that what happened in Cameroon is like dropping a...
This is in Morocco. And this happened in April. Let me get the facts. Let me get the facts. That's all. This, the person who relayed this. Let me just read from the person writing. Good evening, brothers and sisters. This video is linked to related to the terrible event that took place on Friday 24th on the border of Melilla, the Spanish enclaves in the north of Morocco. Hundreds of African immigrants were violently treated by the Moroccan police. 18 of them were killed. But the number now has climbed to 30, if not more. Amnesty in Spain also concerned about the brutal treatment. It's not coming from the Spanish police where the immigrant is expected to go, but the treatment is coming from a country whom they just transitioned. one will expect the Spanish police to treat them because they are coming from Africa. But it's not the case. It is Africa, a country, Morocco, in fellow African country, treating its fellow Africans as animals. It is quite a bizarre watching this brutality. And yet we have the so-called the Kigali getaway, and they watching this image appreciate themselves that they are in a Commonwealth of Nations. I mean, these people, they are all outlive their age. Each time the current generation be able to rule Africa, that have their own ancestors that have lost their memory and to depart and allowed the younger generation to treat their fellow brothers not as animals, but as human beings. As human beings. As human beings. Stay tuned, don't go away.
Sugar, we're basing on what? Who is the sugar and who is the what? I'm asking.
I think each time and speak up, we cannot tolerate this. Now let's look at why are they migrating in a land that is fed, available resources, mineral and everything. Why should they migrate? We can figure this out and do a right thing that we can make the world a better place in Africa so that legal. The first thing is to get rid of this
لكن خزنوا جدارنا بوليس
لا بوليسي
يا بوليس ما كاين
بوليسي ما كاين لا بوليس حنا كاين
and leave this habit of relying on European control. We can change this culture and improve on the existence of Africa for the all African as a whole. We all have been educated in the various universities. We know how they arrive in the current dispensation. We can change the culture if we are truly honest to ourselves and be able to look at the fundamental question: where did Africa go wrong? We can do this. We know what they did. We know, and the financial glue why Africa cannot move forward is because France and many, some of them, prevent them. How do we look how China is progressing? It's because the reform education system changed the cultural aspect, laid the foundation work, and began to renovate. We can do this. We can change this culture and improve on the existing life of fellow human beings. We are in a transition on this planet Earth. We have, between the time we were born, probably to 110 or 20 years, depending on our gene architecture and how we manage ourselves. But we have a transition on this planet to die. But we can make the world a better place while we are on this smooth transition. But we cannot become a brutal to our own fellow people, and we cannot change. We have a certain individual that are in power. We can change by creating our own currency, convert education system to a research institution, began to build, we have the land available, provide all the infrastructure development for the common good of mankind, is things that we can do to make a significant life to fellow human beings. We cannot live in this habitual way of life when humans are treated like animals. And yet we have others that are running for presidency. They have no goal, no philosophy, no vision at all. And yet we claim to be leaders. I think it's time Africa needs to start looking forward. We have the brutal military that have no knowledge of education, and yet they force them to control human life, that they are zero tolerance and no zero education, mentally deprived. I guess I don't have words to describe it. Maybe it's time we start transition all these old nuggets that we have, we call them government leaders. They absolutely have no value. Let's look at the ECHO that was supposed to be instituted in Nigeria, the West African region. They abandoned it because France has to tell them what to do, because they are utilized its French colonial territory to suppress them so that nothing can be done. Now let's come back to Southern Cameroon questions. Why don't we recognize the sovereign state of Southern Cameroon? Why should Southern Cameroon live under the umbrella of a foreign domination, La Republique du Cameroun? We have outgrown this habitual way of life. We need a reform, and we can't carry a reform with the existence of this cannibal, rubbish, French manipulative system. Fellow brothers, I want to take a moment to really ask all of us, where are we heading to? Do we thought about ourselves? The fundamental question to liberate and be free for the society. The key thing that France control Africa is their currency, because they can. The economic of the most powerful tools is currency. Currency is the monetary value that assists in the development, the exchange of goods and services. Why should France? France is preventing Africa from instituting its policy because they want a glue to tell them what they should do and what they cannot do. It's time Africa needs to liberate itself from this France institutional policy. I want to take a moment to thank all of you for watching. Make sure you subscribe, you share, copy and paste, email, whatever you do, keep the ball rolling. Keep the information rolling. Keep everything rolling. Africa needs to liberate itself from this colonial era. This is Funton Daniel. I wish you all a happy and good Sunday. Thank you very much.
Nation that you call yours, people can do what has been done to our children in West Cameroon. I call it West Cameroon because